Hello and welcome to this video. My name's Beckham. Modifiers have been a part of Pictures 2xe9 and now PTE-AV-Studio for quite some time. But the benefits or the use of them is going to vary enormously from user to user. Now, I'm not talking about the speed modifiers here, which we've been using even before the other modifiers were introduced. If we go to any one of the animation options on the right hand side of the Objects and Animation screen, each of the options has an Add Modifier icon, and it's within that icon that we find both the speed and also the modifiers I want to talk about today. You can see them listed as oscillation, jumping, ping pong and shift, and every one of these has got exactly the same right the way down, even to the blur. Now, I've already recorded a video which demonstrates when and why we should be applying the speed modifiers. So I'm not going to deal with them here. We'll link to them below and you can take a look at that video if you've not seen it. Now, when we animate an image, video or an object, we generally require the minimum of 2 keyframes. One of those keyframes is to determine the start of the animation, and one to establish the end of the animation. With the modifiers that we're going to look at, they only require 1 keyframe. The modifiers I've used in my own projects and what we're viewing here is pretty basic. But to be honest, basic is good when you're trying to get a feel for how something works. Now, what we see with these modifiers is they're often used in conjunction with other animation. So in effect, we're modifying that animation. It's why we see the modifiers available on pan, zoom, rotate and the other animation options. As you can see here in the Objects and Animation screen, I've just created some text. If I press play and we see the cursor going from the extreme left to the extreme right, which indicates there's no animation been placed into the keyframe at all. If I select the keyframe, I'm going to go up to the top right. I'm going to choose a pan modifier. So if I select the modifier, which one of these do I want? Well, pan X will move left and right, pan Y up and down, pan Z back and forth. Let's choose pan Y for a moment and we'll choose jumping. We can see the default parameters 50, 1, 0. Now when I press play, we can see exactly what that modifier is doing. So we can see here that the movement is determined by the parameters of the modifier, not by a second keyframe as we would expect in general animation. We also saw that the movement was from its present location down and back up to its original position. That's determined by the amplitude setting, which is 50. So if I put a minus in front of that 50, we're going to get exactly the same movement, but the movement is now going to be from the baseline up and down. And how much movement will be determined by the value of the amplitude. And if we change the repeats, let's put a wild number in here, 10. And put my cursor back to the start, you can see exactly what the modifier would do. Not appropriate for text, but if you are into animation, then that sort of movement may be just what you require. Now, I don't want to complicate matters here, but I think one thing is worth saying. Whenever we apply a modifier, such as the jumping modifier, the movement we applied to that first keyframe is linear. So we still get the opportunity of adding a speed modifier. So if I wanted my jumping to be slow at the start and quick at the end, then I could add a speed modifier and maybe select accelerate. And if I wanted it smooth, well, I've got those options. So we can add one modifier speed setting to a general modifier, in our case pan Y. In the demonstration I showed a few moments ago, which was an introduction to a black and white sequence, I just applied a basic jumping modifier to first a gentle pan and then a 360-degree rotation. So let me do that with my basic text. I've got my first keyframe on the extreme left as per normal. So I'm going to move the text to create a gentle pan. I can do that by clicking and dragging over the X on the pan X there and place it over on the left. I'll right click the timeline and clone a keyframe, drag it to the end, and I'll do the same with the X, dragging it to the right. So there's the pan. So when I put my cursor back at the start and we press play, we're going to get the basic modifiers text moving from left to right. But as it moves left to right, it's going to bounce upwards because we've got -50 in the amplitude, and it's going to repeat 10 times. That's probably far too much, but we'll take a look. Let's reselect that first keyframe and we'll bring this back to something a little more gentle with just one bounce. And what we need to remember here is how quickly that animation takes place. Whether it's been created with 2 keyframes or a modifier is going to be determined by your slide duration. Here I'm working with the default 7 seconds. If I had 3 seconds, then the movement we've just seen would be far quicker. Now I've just done that, changed my slide duration to 3 seconds, and when I press play, you can see the difference. Now one of the other modifiers that may work quite well in this situation is oscillation. So if I select the first keyframe and we go back to the top right of the animation tab, we do get the opportunity to just disable a modifier, but on this occasion I'll just remove it. I'll reapply it in the same way using the pan Y, but this time I'll select the oscillation. I think most of you will know exactly what sort of movement we're going to get here, and I'll press play and we can take a look, and we're looking over that same 3-second slide duration. Over the time since modifiers have been introduced, I have tried the other options, but I haven't yet found a great need to use them. Now whether that's because I haven't thought of a good idea yet, or they're probably not suited to my style of audio visual, but I found a use for the oscillation and the jumping, but I haven't found a use for ping pong or shift, and I suspect they're probably going to have a greater use for those more involved in less photography and more animation perhaps. But if anyone's got any great ideas, then I'd love to hear them. Now as you can see by the spinning round of the screen, I've got another small project on the go here, because I think we can make use of that jumping modifier when we're using 3D rotation. I think it looks pretty good. Let me show you what I've set up here, and I think probably the best way to do that is press play and we'll just take a look. The image will appear on screen, a couple of seconds, and then it will do a full 3D rotate with the other bird on the other side. One is the male, one is the female. I've made the image slightly smaller, but there's no great reason for that, just so we can see them clearly. Well, there's 2 things I'd like to do to improve that rotation. It looks quite nice, especially when the images are slightly smaller, I think. But what it needs first is some speed. If we're going to start an animation with the image already on screen, then generally speaking, the speed options we're likely to need is going to be smooth. So the animation starts smooth, ends smooth, which means it'll speed up slightly in the middle, but we'll hardly notice it, but we will notice the gradual start and the gradual stop. Now what gives the rotation, of course, if I select my second keyframe, if you look up to the top right and down to the rotate options, you'll see in the rotate Y we've got a setting of 180, and that will turn the bower male round, and of course the bower female will follow suit. What I need to do though is to select the first keyframe, go back to the rotate modifiers, and first I want to select that smooth option. So now when I press play, I do get the animation starting smooth and ending smooth. Let me go back to that first keyframe just once more, and now we can add a modifier. Now the modifier I'd like to add is actually a pan modifier. I'm going to go up to my modifiers. I'm going to select pan Z. Remember, X is left and right, Y is up and down, Z is back and forth. So if I select pan Z, and I'm going to select the jumping option, I'm going to increase the amplitude to 250, and we'll put the cursor back at the start and we'll take a look. And I hope you'll agree that the animation is vastly improved by the addition of that modifier. As the image rotates, it drops back slightly and looks pretty good. But there's something missing. Let me put my cursor back and press play. There's something missing. What's missing is the fact that because we've applied a modifier to the pan, I need to add that smooth speed option as well. So back to the add modifier, animation speed, smooth, and now I hope we'll see an improvement. It should look very nice indeed. Far more gentle on the eye. Now with this 3D rotation with the jumping modifier, it may work equally well if the images do fill the screen at the start and the end of the animation. The jumping modifier then may give more emphasis to the rotation. Let's give it a try. If I select the bower male, which is the parent object here, and I select both of the keyframes, I can go back to the zoom, double click the X, reset to 100, put my cursor back to the start, and we can just take a look at how it's going to be viewed, fully filling the screen. Well, I think it has merits both ways, and we're all going to choose something a little different. As you can see here by the spinning round of the screen, I've opened up the Objects and Animations screen with the demo project that I showed right at the start of this video. I'd just like to walk you through this a little bit. If I pick up the cursor on the left, you can see I've got selected the keyframes for both the white text and the black text. It's important to say perhaps that I created the text in Photoshop because what I wanted was to have a white border around the word white and a black border around the word black. So when they dropped into their respective colors of black and white, we could see the text as an outline, but when they switched, then the outline appears to disappear, but in fact it's still there, it just can't be seen. But if I come back to the start for a moment, what we've got here is exactly what we've been talking about through this video. Both pieces of text are just panning gently, the black from right to left, the white from left to right, and the up and down movement is created by the modifier. So the modifier is always going to be attached to the first keyframe that starts the animation, so that will be attached, and if I select one and you look up at the top right, there you can see the jumping modifier set to the default settings of 50, 1 and 0, but also I've got speed added as well. But when we move past that point, there's a short pause, but then we have a second part of the animation, and here we've got both pieces of text doing a 360, but the up and down movement again is created with the modifier. So if I select the first keyframe of that particular section and you look up at the top right, there once again you can see exactly the same options were selected. But if I select the second keyframe and you look up at the rotate Y, you can see the animation I put into those, a 360 twist. And just to take it off screen, what I've got is the whole thing tilting to the side and the text appearing to slide off to the right. And to allow me to rotate both pieces of text, I've got both of those within a frame. So it's the frame that creates the rotation, and it's the animation of the individual white and black text from here to here that slides both of them off the screen. Now, one of the guys on the PTE-AV-Studio forum, Dave G, has made a really good demo of modifiers, and he's allowed me to reproduce it here. So sit back and we'll take a look, and as you can see, it starts with what I did with my text, a simple linear animation from left to right. But I think this example does show that the speed option of smooth worked particularly well. We can see it much more clearly here, that the object starts smooth and ends smooth. But now we can see that jumping modifier applied and the effect of it. Now Dave has marked all of these options, so you don't really need me to speak all the way through this. So we'll be quiet and allow it to play out, and we can just watch the demonstration. If you've been watching this video on YouTube, can I encourage you to subscribe to my channel? And if you hit that notification bell, you'll be informed whenever I put up new content. I'll see you next time.